Welcome into Locked On Knicks. It's player preview time. That's right. We're getting so close to the season. So today I'm getting into the two-way contracts and what these guys could potentially bring to the table this year. So Kevin McCullar Jr., Ariel Hukporti, and Jacob Toppin next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notifications bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. We've been in off-season mode for about a month and change now, but pretty soon going to be switching to daily podcasts again for in-season mode. So get ready for that around midway through this month as we get ready for training camps. We're going to start getting back to 5 episodes a week for you guys. And I should also remind you that I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And today I'm going through some player previews. That's right. It's time to preview the roster. The roster finally seems set, I think, for this coming season. At least who will start the season for the Knicks seems pretty set at this point. Maybe there's just a little question about who's going to fill that final roster spot. But I think there's a decent chance the Knicks might leave that spot open, as well as leave their taxpayer mid-level exception available, just in case some player comes out of camp and gets cut or whatever that interests them, or whatever the case may be. But otherwise, I think we're pretty well set. Like after that Precious Achiuwa signing, after the last couple two-way signings with Kevin McCullar Jr. and Jacob Toppin, I think things are pretty well set. So I think it's safe now to start talking about these guys, what they're going to bring to the Knicks this season, and what we can expect from them. So we'll start, all the way down at the end of the rotation, the end of the roster, everything else here with the two-way players. And I'll be knocking these guys out solo today, but I think that, as we progress along, Gavin and I are going to work on either getting guests in or, working together and figuring out the rest of these players, especially some of the bigger ones. So, but for today, I'm breaking down these guys solo. So Kevin McCullar Jr., he's 23 years old, and last year in the NCAA as a fifth-year senior for Kansas, which he transferred to from Texas Tech, he averaged 18.3 points, 6 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.4 blocks, had splits of 45.4% from the field, 33.3% from the three-point line, and 80.5% from the free throw line. So as more of a wing player, 33.3% was actually his career high from three. So not a prolific three-point shooter in college, 30.9% from three for his college career. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, he was putting up a number of attempts per game, like usually 3 to 5 attempts per game. I think his fifth-year senior year this past year, he put up I think it was roughly 5 attempts per game from three. So, it's not like that's a small sample and he wasn't taking threes. It's just he wasn't super prolific in that regard in college. He did have a huge leap in assist percentage in his final year, up to 22.9%. So you could see with that 4.1 assists. I mean, he was clearly tasked with playmaking quite a bit more in his final year with Kansas, and it sort of vibes with his final year at Texas Tech, his junior season. So, or his true junior season, I guess I should say, because he was at about 19.3 or something percent there. So pretty similar to what he did that year, but a huge jump from his first year at Kansas, where he was only at a 13% assist percentage. So was clearly tasked with playmaking more as a super senior than he was as in his first senior year with Kansas. And then also he had by far the highest usage of his career at 28%. So that's reflected in the fact that, you know, he was dishing the ball more, but also leveled up as a scorer. It was by far his best scoring year because he averaged 18.3 points, was only averaging around 10 for his career prior to that. And I think his career high, I don't have it up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was like 10.6 points per game or something like that. So a pretty huge uptick in scoring there, which I guess is sort of uh, encouraging when you look at the fact that he averaged his highest percentage from three and, you know, among some of his best shooting splits with a big uptick in overall usage too, which is good. So that's things you like to see. So what I'm going to do just for these two-way guys, we'll probably get a little more into the weeds with most other players, but since you know, there's a little less meat on the bone to dissect with these guys, I'm just going to give what I'd like McCullar's goals to be this year, and then my biggest concern with him, and I'll give that for all three of the players I'm going to go through today. So what I'd like to see from McCullar this year, first off, prove he can translate those playmaking skills to the NBA. I think that at his absolute best, this guy could become Josh Hart-esque. You know, I think if he becomes like a smallish wing, but who plays pretty big, like, you know, you see the rebounding numbers are solid for him. He looks like he's big, like he's built for the NBA. So I think that, you know, he could potentially carve out that sort of niche for himself where he's like a wing that, you know, maybe if he can't quite shoot, which is sort of similar to Josh Hart, but can still push the pace, can still dish the ball, can still rebound the ball, you know, do a bunch of other things at his size that make him useful, then maybe he finds a role like that. And, you know, even if he only remains like at best a low 30s 3-point shooter, he could still do enough things on the court to, you know, carve out some time in the NBA. That said, I would, you know, if I were him and I was setting goals for this year, I would take a million threes because, you know, honestly, him shooting threes and that skill getting better or not could make or break his NBA career, even if he's able to put some other stuff together. You know, you have to do that at such a high level, a la Josh Hart, if you want to make it in the NBA and not be able to shoot as someone who's, you know, on the lower half of the 6 foot bracket, you know, like who's 6'6" or under. You kind of want to be able to shoot. I think that's a pretty big deal. But otherwise, I would just say, you know, and maybe this seems harsh, but don't focus too hard on making the NBA this year. If I was Kevin McCullar, like I think that in all likelihood, he's probably going to spend almost this whole season in Westchester with the Westchester Knicks. Like, you know, I think that the team as it's designed is just really loaded at the spots where he would presume to play, which is the, you know, maybe he's a shooting guard, maybe he's small forward. Maybe someday he develops into like small ball power forward again, a la Josh Hart. But, you know, I think that as of right now, all those spots are pretty well filled on the Knicks. I don't think that he's going to have a, you know, a role this season. I don't think he's going to be able to play pretty much anytime other than like garbage time, unless there's some really severe injury issues, in which case I think the Knicks have bigger things to worry about than, you know, if Kevin McCullar's getting playing time or not. It'll probably be like, oh, geez, what's going on here? Like, are the playoffs still in play if Kevin McCullar is getting significant playing time? But, you know, if he comes along well in the G League and, you know, he might have a role on this team in the future. I think, you know, I think if he can sort of scale his game to the NBA level and prove that he can do that, then, you know, maybe they reach a point where they feel comfortable enough in the future if some tough decisions have to be made, which I think the toughest decision at this point would be, you know, do we move Julius Randle? Do we move one of the Villanova players? If not both of them, or if not two of them, you know, like Dante and Josh Hart or something to, you know, make an upgrade to this team. You know, it's ultimately a business. You know, the power of friendship is strong, but some of these guys might need to go at some point. It might be a really tough decision, but, you know, if McCullar's able to sort of play himself into like a bench lead guy sort of role, which I think is probably, I wouldn't say realistic, but attainable for him. If he can scale some of what he did in college, then, you know, maybe that's a way that he can carve out a role for himself. But I guess that leads to my biggest concern for him, which is that he can't scale his game up to the NBA level, whether that's, you know, improving his shooting or He's not fast enough on defense. I mean, he was like I think a two-time All Big 12, All Defense. That's great, but maybe his defense doesn't scale to the NBA level, or maybe his playmaking just doesn't translate. Maybe he's just a beat too slow, in the at the NBA level compared to the college level, and isn't able to find that balance. I don't know. I hate to say anyone who improved so much in their fifth year in college is a finished product, but like the reality is like given his age, the fact that he's coming in the league at 23 years old, the fact that he's had 5 years of college play under his belt already, he just has 4 to 5 years less than some of his peers to figure things out, which, he literally has a guy on the team with him that he'll probably see a lot of in the G League this year in Pacom Dadier, who's I think you can make a case has a much higher ceiling just because of the fact that he's so much younger. He's more of a ball of clay for the Knicks to work with, whatever. So we'll see how it works out with Kevin McCullar, but I do think there's a lot for him to prove this year, and there is a path to him becoming, an NBA contributor. I think it's just everything's going to have to go right for him. So we'll see if he can start getting on that path in Westchester this year. Speaking of guys in Westchester, I want to also talk about Ariel Hukporti and Jacob Toppin, the other two-way guys who will probably spend a lot of time there too. So I'll talk about them in just a moment. But first, I got to let you all know about our friends over at Gametime. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Let me tell you guys, I use Gametime myself. I'm actually today going to the Mets Red Sox game, hoping to see the Mets keep their winning ways going here, keep their potential playoff chase alive, which should be a lot of fun. But I didn't want to spend a ton of money to do it, if I'm being completely honest. But I got seats in the 100 level, right field, prime home run territory, right by all the good food, all that for like $15 each. And I think it was $20 each after fees. Super, super inexpensive, which was awesome. So I love that Gametime doesn't charge a ton of fees. They make it super easy to find really good seats. Like if you go on their app and you look around and start zooming in and out, you'll just see in certain sections there are seats that have like a big old star next to them, nice and bold faced. So like that's a really good deal right there. And that's how I found my seats. It's my favorite way to look for seats now because I've had nothing but good luck on Gametime with finding the best deals that I could possibly find for any given thing that I'm looking to do, and that includes concerts, theater, everything else. So there's all kinds of great stuff you can do on the Gametime app. It also comes with the lowest price guarantee, which means Gametime will give you the lowest price, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same seats for less money somewhere else, which is amazing. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, which is great. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, and I'm back in to keep going through these two-way players, previewing the season, which feels weird to say. It feels like the offseason has just flown right by. Although in some ways it feels like an eternity. I don't know. Some ways it feels like it was just yesterday the Knicks played their last game. Other ways it feels like it's been forever. Definitely excited to see what things are going on this season. But guy we might not see a ton in the NBA this year. Might be spending a lot of time in Westchester, though. It's probably a fun ticket. Go maybe check out Gametime, go see a Westchester Knicks game. Ariel Hukporti, who's 22 years old, last year played with Melbourne United in the NBL. While he was there, he averaged 8.4 points, 7 rebounds, 2.4 of those were offensive rebounds. Always a big stat for centers on the Knicks. 0.7 assists, 0.6 steals, 1.5 blocks per game with Melbourne United. And what I think Hukporti's goals should be this year, I think that the first thing that I noticed, and this is, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch a ton of his NBL tape, so there might be more to how he plays than what I realize here. But I'm kind of mostly going off summer league, where I think that he was placed into an environment that would be most similar to what the Knicks would expect of him. obviously with Dice Yoshimoto, coaching that team and, um, them running things similar to how Tibbs is going to want to run them. I think that that's probably the best place we can glean, how Hukporti looks in the environment that he'll be in the NBA. So my main thing that I took away from that is he needs to work on the defensive end quite a bit to get up to speed with what the Knicks are going to want him to do. I think during summer league he did get gradually better at playing sort of a Tibbs style drop defense, but it definitely I think it vexed him a little bit, especially at first. He didn't seem to quite know where he had to be. He wasn't shading out to shooters as quickly as he had to, which was leading to the Knicks getting torched a bit from three when he was out there at center. He, I think, just was struggling to kind of tag his man and sort of keep an eye on all the action. Where like he really, I think the Tibbs really tasked his centers with being sort of like a middle linebacker out there, where they have to like have an eye on everything, be able to watch their man, cutting to the hoop or whatever, but also keep an eye on the guy, that is coming around the screen up top and make sure that they shade out enough, but not too much so as to let their guy get behind them and not play the passing lane right or whatever. There's a lot that goes into it. So I'm not surprised that it took Hukporti a little bit to start kind of getting his feet wet, but I think that I think he just needs to work on that. And hopefully in Westchester they really drill that into him because I think there's an outline of a guy who could potentially be a Tibbs type center here. Like I think he could be sort of a super version of what Precious offers because I think he's just got a little bit better of a build for a center if he's able to make it work. But I also think that Porty needs to do a lot of mobility drills. I think he seemed a little heavy footed out there. I don't know about unathletic. Like I don't think he was unathletic. I think he looked like he needed to just shed a couple pounds. Get like it's sort of similar to when Mitch put on a ton of muscle weight. Sometimes it's not always the best. I think there needs to be a balance in the NBA now of like lean muscle so that you can body guys in the post or whatever, but also being light enough on your feet that you can make those closeouts to the perimeter and stuff like that. So I think he needs to work on that first off, like in the weight room, but then do a lot of mobility drills. Like I don't think he looked like he was super stiff or anything. I think he was just a step slow here and there. So just, working on, side to side mobility, the lateral quickness, do lots of drills for that. Whether it's with like the tension bands or whatever, like just start getting that better. And then, just the mobility of being able to go from in the paint or like just outside the paint to the 3-point line to contest a shot, being able to get that hand up, all that stuff. I think that the more he could work on that, the better. And then I think I would like to see him just keep refining that offensive game too. I think he had a really pleasing baby hook in summer league, which tells me maybe he's got a floater in his bag if he works hard enough. Also, just keep those big dunks coming. I think he finishes with a lot of power. That was one of the highlights to me was seeing him, get the ball around the hoop and then just going up and getting a big dunk over somebody. I think that's going to be a key for him in the NBA potentially as well. You want to take all the easy points you can get. Also, if he, continues on that upward mobility, and his leaping ability and stuff, then maybe he becomes a lob threat. That would be great too. But I think also same as McCullar, I wouldn't get too focused on making the NBA this year if I was Hukporti. Like just work on refining things down the G League. Maybe you get called up by next year, for like actual play time. Although I do think he has a much clearer path than anyone else on this particular episode if he figures things out. So I guess that's something to keep an eye on. Like I don't think that Jericho Sims's role as the third center is necessarily like locked in. And I even don't think that Precious is necessarily like super locked in as the second center. So, I think if Hukporti is really killing it in the G League and, maybe the Knicks try him out like 30 games in or something to the NBA season and say, hey, you know what, let's like, maybe it's a game where Precious is, out for some reason or whatever, or you just want to try something new. Maybe they give him a shot then if he's really killing it in the G League. Because I do think the Knicks still kind of need a more permanent solution at backup center behind Mitch. And I think the Hukporti, if he really figures things out, could be sort of a decent enough, facsimile of what Mitch offers to sort of do that. It's just there are some concerns. So let me just get into my concerns, I guess, then to close this segment out. But My biggest concerns with him would be like either he's too small or he's too slow or he just doesn't have the timing that he needs on the defensive end. I don't really think his offense will keep him out of the league. He has a nice little bag on offense. I think that he's solid there. But if he can leverage his physical gifts he has and mitigate being on the small end for a center, or if he can't leverage his physical gifts he does have, plus mitigate being on the small end, I just don't think he's going to be able to make it work in the NBA. Then, like, he needs to be able to like be athletic enough and be big enough and be long enough and everything else to override the fact that he is on the smaller end. I think he measures in at like 6'9", which is not a death knell in the NBA certainly anymore, but it's less than ideal if you're not going to offer like stretchy skills, which even for all of his flaws, like Precious Achiuwa can get the ball on the perimeter and can occasionally hit a three. He can, put the ball on the floor from the 3-point line and dribble it all the way in and finish. Like, he has some skills in that regard. And I don't know that we've seen those out of Hukporti, who's more traditional big style. So he's going to need to really prove that like he's got the power and the verticality and everything else. And, hopefully we see that out of him. Hopefully the NBA conditioning program is great for him and he's able to work things out. But I also want to talk about Jacob Toppin, the one incumbent of these two-way guys. So I'll get into him in just a moment. But first, I got to remind you all that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And what's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in childhood? Because like kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. So what's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. And I know I'm certainly I think I fall in that category. I don't know if I necessarily branch out enough anymore. So it's always good to think about potentially trying something new and, going into therapy and becoming more in tune with yourself can help you do that. So it's definitely a useful skill to have. You're never too old to stop learning and stop knowing new things. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, and I'm back in to finish up with these two-way guys, and the last guy is the guy who was on a two-way deal last year. So that's Jacob Toppin. He's going to be 24 years old this season, going into his second year in the NBA, second year with the Knicks. Spent a decent amount of time with Westchester last year on a two-way deal. Also spent an okay amount of time with the Big Knicks in the NBA last year. Pretty modest stat line. So I'll get over why, or I'll say it, but it's not really worth too much. 1.4 points, zero point 0.8 rebounds, 0.3 assists. He shot 55.6% from the field, 25% from three, and a perfect 100% from the free throw line. But that comes with the caveat that he only appeared in 9 games for the Knicks last year, only played 38 total minutes, took 9 total shots, and 2 total free throws attempted. So not exactly the most robust stat line to draw from there. So let's instead look at his G League resume here. So in the G League last year, he averaged 14.9 points, 6.9 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.7 blocks, shot 40.6% from the field, 30.3% from three, and 82% from the free throw line. That was in 17 games at the G League level and 32.3 minutes per game. So definitely a more substantial sample size there. So I think he had a fairly solid showing in the G League last year, though not the dominance that you typically see by guys that are truly NBA ready. For example, Deuce McBride was averaging like 30 points per game in the G League when he was down there, and got a handful of games his rookie and sophomore year in the G League and just absolutely wiped the floor with that level of competition. You even saw back in the day, to invoke an old nickname like Trey Burke, for example, was clearly like ready for the NBA, and was an NBA level scorer and just absolutely destroyed at that level. And so you see, I guess there's probably some examples of guys that have just been modestly good in the G League, but and still managed to figure it out in the NBA. But I think for the most part, if you think a guy is going to be good enough to make the NBA, he's got to be pretty well dominating G League. And I don't know that Toppin necessarily falls in that category. And maybe this is a lazy comp, maybe not, but I just think it's so easy to watch how he moves and plays, and you can sort of see outlines of Obi Toppin again, for better or worse. Like, I think that his fluidity on offense is pretty good. His obviously the leaping ability is crazy. His ability to get up for alley oops and stuff like that, fantastic. And just the overall ability to dunk over people is pretty fantastic too. But I think that it's safe to question if he plays big enough, um, and if he's gonna sort of find his way in the NBA as a result. Because it's like, are you a four? Are you a three? Can you defend threes at the NBA level? I don't know for sure, but like, can you bang with a four or five to get a rebound? I'm not necessarily sure about that either. So I guess if I was going to set goals for him, I'd say keep on shooting and shooting and shooting. Because like, if that 3-point percentage goes up, and I mean, he looked pretty good shooting the ball during summer league, so maybe he's on his way up there. But if his 3-point percentage goes up and he could be like a shooter slasher type, big wing, that's not a total turnstile on D. I think maybe he could find himself a bench role, sort of similar to what Obi's gotten at this point. Being able to get the ball on the perimeter and have a very legit threat of a 3-point shot. And then if that's the case, then if guys start closing out hard on you, then, I think he has the ability to put the ball on the floor and beat a closeout, get inside. He's a pretty good finisher, or at least has the outlines of a pretty good finisher. So, as long as he's not completely terrible on defense, I think he might be able to find 10 to 15 minutes per game at the NBA level if that's the case. But I think the three point percentage needs to go up to like at least 36-37% from that like 30% mark. So he's got a pretty high uphill battle there to be able to find that. But also, I think he should try to bulk up and put some size on in the weight room too. Like, much like Obi, I just think he should be getting more boards at his size. Like, and I understand that he's extremely bouncy, and a lot of that is probably based off being the weight that he is or whatever. But I think, similar to like a Mitchell Robinson, he could sacrifice a little bit of bounce in favor of strength, and that might help him out a lot, at least on the boards. And maybe he gets 10% less fast, but 30% stronger. I think that would be a good trade-off, considering I just don't think that even if he stays as fast as he is right now and whatever, I don't really see him guarding threes or being like a small forward in any sense of the word. So I think he should probably plan his career around being a power forward. So that would require, I think, bulking up just a little bit. My biggest concern with him, I think it's mostly just that he's not going to get any better. I do think, I mean, uh, this is like maybe marginal, but I do think there was a higher upside, more position of need player that they could have gotten with this last two-way spot, which was Skapintsev. Um, I think, Skapintsev is like 25 years old, so like a year older than Jacob Toppin, and I think Skapintsev might even turn 26 during the season. So really, really late bloomer. And Skapintsev had some pretty ugly G League stats. So if you want to talk about guys that didn't dominate the G League, like Skapintsev didn't, but he had a really great summer league. And I think that all in all, like, the Knicks just have a bigger need at the center position right now than a potential backup four, I guess. So I think that was my main reasoning for wanting Skapintsev over bringing Toppin back. But that said, like, I think Toppin has to prove like that he could still get better, because he came in as an old rookie. He was already 23 years old, and similar to Kevin McCullar, it's like you kind of have to have some of your skills translating right away to prove that you can make it in the NBA, because you're already so far behind the rest of your peers, as far as the amount of time the amount of leeway you're going to get in the NBA before you're just looked at as like, well, this guy's like 25, 26 years old, and this should be his prime, but he's just not good enough. So, I think he's sort of fighting an uphill battle here, but he'll have to prove that he's got some more upside this year. I think Hukporti and McCullar sort of represent more of an upside play in these spots. And I don't know if I see it with Toppin. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe he'll come out and average 25 a game in the G League and then prove that he deserves some playing time, either with the Knicks or some other team at some point this year. So maybe I get proven wrong here, but I don't think so. I just think that he's not quite as good as Obi was, which means that he's going to have a hard time finding playing time in the NBA and ultimately a hard time putting together an NBA career. But we'll see. But at any rate, I think that's it for this episode. Nice somber note to end on. But all apologies to Jacob Toppin. Like I said, I hope to be proven wrong. I just don't know if I see it. But at any rate, we have some more player previews coming up, either with Gavin and I or with us with some guests, possibly one or two other solo ones, just to kind of hammer out the back of the bench here. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.